Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Systeme.io podcast with me, Natasha Pinto. Join us as we discuss all things digital marketing and entrepreneurship. Here, online business owners take us on a journey, how they went from zero to launch. Now, today our guest is Michael Killen. He's a digital marketing expert, head coach, and the founder of Sell Your Service. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you here. So what I like to do with our guests is I'd like to start at the beginning. So can you give me a tiny peek into your history? What prompted you to change and in 2016 start actively helping funnel builders?
Yeah, cool. So I had a pretty standard education. I never really thought I would be like an entrepreneur. Back when I was at school, the idea of running a business was really considered for people who were elite or already pretty wealthy,
Yeah.
or like people had a perception that you had to be really smart, and I was just a regular standard. In fact, I hated school in general. And I actually trained to be a chef. So I went out to France and trained to do that and could not hack it. It was just another level of stress. And again, kind of being super open and honest, just showing people the winding paths that we can go on. I got pretty heavily into drugs and alcohol, and I realized I really didn't want to go down this road any further. And I basically said I want a job with air conditioning. So that's when I got a marketing degree. And I did a marketing degree with product design because I thought I'd be one of those kind of like, working for Apple or Dyson, one of these really progressive companies. And it turns out I can't draw for love nor money. I'm an atrocious artist. So I had to add on this marketing degree. And then that's when I got work doing, like my first job was just doing door-to-door sales. I didn't go straight into corporate marketing. And then eventually I did like secondhand car sales, and bit by bit worked my way up to becoming the head of UK digital for a quite a large data security company. And this was when Facebook was new. So people didn't really know how to use social. I certainly didn't have an idea of the impact that it would have. And then in 2012, I was made redundant or fired, depending on who you ask. Lost my job, and I thought I don't want to do this ever again. I don't want to work for somebody else. And so I started up an agency, and bit by bit grew that to a point where I was able to exit it in 2016. And the reason I was able to build it up quite quickly and frankly sell it, it was actually technically, the technical term was an earn out, but we moved it on to a colleague of mine who is still running it today, was because I was able to sell marketing funnels essentially for 25 grand. I didn't have a problem with selling them for a high ticket price, whereas people were selling them for like 3 or 4,000. I was like, it's 25 grand or nothing. And the number one question I was asked by my colleagues at the time was, how on earth could you possibly sell what is essentially a website and some email marketing for 25k? And I was like, that's the easy part. I'll show you how to do that. And I literally did a whiteboard, and then that turned into a Facebook group, and then that turned into a course, and now we have a coaching program, and we have software. And we work with or partner with guys like yourselves. And I love what Systeme.io is doing. So there's some really great movement in the space now, and that's all we do is I just help people sell marketing funnel projects to their customers. And it makes me a very boring party guest because that's all I want to talk about, but I really enjoy it, and I think my team enjoy it as well.
That's a fantastic story, and I think quite common between a lot of entrepreneurs. You never really set out to be like, okay, cool, I'm going to 100% start this business and it's going to succeed, and that's my whole life trajectory done. Everyone kind of accidentally falls into it or messes up a few times before they finally figure out what they're doing. And I think, yeah, it's a common thread between everyone who's kind of trying to make it.
And I really don't like it when we see on TV and stuff, people were like, oh, I was an entrepreneur ever since I was a kid at school, and I was selling sweets and Pokemon cards. And I think that kind of says to people, oh, if you don't have that bug when you're a kid, then maybe you shouldn't try it when you're older. And I think it's the reverse. I think a lot of people go through work and school and education and then realize actually I could kind of take a bit more control over my own life and destiny and set up something that I want to do. And it's a legitimate option now, and it's pretty much free to start up. Like the costs have never been lower to start up a business. And it's just a really exciting time to get that going. And it's interesting you talk about failing a few times. That brief history I've given you doesn't include me losing a house. It doesn't, two houses. It doesn't include me losing hundreds of thousands of pounds in spending it with the wrong people. It doesn't include me failing a software company. There was a lot of things that went wrong during that process, and even now, up until this point, and that I think it's really easy to give like a highlight reel of what's worked, when in
Yeah.
actual fact, the majority of the time, it's you are missing. You are constantly taking shots and missing. And maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. So it's an interesting journey for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think let's talk about that, but the numbers side of things. So
Yeah.
can you give us a comparison in salary? So kind of what it was like that first year where you started in business on your own to how you're doing now?
Yeah. So 2021 was a really interesting year. I took home around £109,000, but I only worked 3 months of it. Throughout 2021, I had cancer through all of it, basically, and it meant I couldn't work. Even if I wanted to work, I couldn't work. That, looking back at the numbers, we were like, okay, well, that's pretty good. The fact that I did 3 months work, managed to take home six figures, still paid my staff. If anything, we hired an extra two members of staff. We had a really successful program launch. But again, year one in 2012 or 2013 was maybe a few grand, because you don't know how to price, you don't know how to service. I was living with my mum. I had to move back home and into my old childhood bedroom. Year two was probably negative. In fact, I know it was, because I had to borrow money from my then girlfriend. And there was an event happening in Thailand with a guy called Troy Dean, who runs a company called WP Elevation, who is still now a big mentor of mine. And for a time, I even coached within his organization, which I think is now called Mavericks. But I remember saying to my now wife, obviously it worked out because we ended up getting married. So, right, I was like, I promise you that me taking this will help launch the next stage of the business. And she did. She lent me the money to go out there and do this program. And that's where I began to learn more about pricing and sales and the model and how to run an agency properly. Years three, four, and five, it wasn't until 2016 that we were even making enough money to pay me, basically. 2016, I probably took home around 30 grand, maybe. So a pretty decent, like mid-level entry job, £30,000. So what's that? 50,000 US, something like that. But it's exponential. If you now look at the 100 grand, we could have probably done a lot more. As in, I could have taken home a lot more, but I wasn't working. So when you say to people, yeah, but I only did 3 months worth of work but managed to take home six figures, I'm fine with that trade-off. And recently I've become a bit more like, would I rather be able to just step away from the business, which apparently we can do, or I can do, go to the beach, go for a swim or whatever, and know that the business is going to keep growing? That to me was way more important. There was a point in about 2017, 2018, where we launched a piece of software and it did hundreds of thousands of dollars in like months. And I was like, this is it. This is when we take off. I've made it. I've cracked the code. And you guys know from working with software, it takes about 24 hours for that dream to disappear. And it turns out that we had hired the wrong people. They were embezzling money and stealing it and taking money out. And the software wasn't properly updated. It wasn't being coded. And I took my eye off the ball. It's a really common mistake for a person to think, I've done it now. I don't have to pay attention to it anymore. Completely took my eye off the ball. And we ended up losing probably about 200,000, as in I had to continue paying that out from another business. So it kind of looked like grew a little bit, huge dip, grew a little bit, and now it's begun to pick up. So those are, and again, I can get more specific if you want, but those are the kind of the numbers that we're dealing with. So I've been going 10 years now, and it's only in 2021. It's like 9 years where we were making enough to be able to comfortably pay the mortgage and comfortably pay our bills.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know that that's, you and I were talking before, and I don't know that that's talked enough about. I think people that think it's immediately 0 to 10, I'm going to make 100 grand in 6 weeks. True, you can make 100 grand in 6 weeks, but it's probably going to take you 10 years to build up the
Yeah,
resources to be able to do it in 6 weeks.
definitely. I think that's a great comparison and a very honest view of how things actually go. Because, like you said, it wasn't just like business intervening. You also had your life actually intervene and your health intervene and say, hey, listen, you can't do this right now. And it is an unfortunate reason for having to step back from your business and kind of let it carry on its own. But I think that is the dream for so many people. They want to have that freedom to say, okay, cool, I have worked my butt off for this long. And now I've built a business that kind of keeps going, even when I want to spend more time with family, do things that I love, maybe work or focus on projects that are more interesting to me than just the small stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, and we did our 2021 kind of review with the team and the 2022 plan going forward. And I think something like that was the best possible thing that could happen to the business, because even if I wanted to work, I couldn't. So I had to put in place, okay, well, who's going to run the coaching calls? And I think we have some really funny perceptions around money, and our idea around money is often very tied closely to our idea of identity. So if I can't coach people, this is what I'm thinking, right? I'm really sick. I can't
Mhm.
coach people, therefore I can't earn money. That's fundamentally not true. I was making money without coaching for a long time before that, but then you get wrapped up and it's this kind of self-fulfilling cycle. And I remember my head coach, Kate, who's did an outstanding job. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in her, it was I didn't believe in myself. I was like, I haven't given her enough training, I haven't set it up enough, I haven't, and she was like, I've got it. There's nothing. And I remember turning to my wife and thinking, like, I think I've made myself redundant from my own business. And it was a bit of a panic moment, if anything. And the ability to step away from your business and have it still earn money certainly is the dream for a lot of people. But the hard question is, what are you going to do to define your identity when you're not running the business? And that's really difficult for people to answer. And that's why a lot of people say they would like to build a business like that, but would
Mm.
never be able to, because it essentially requires them to stand away and say, how do I prove to people that I am completely redundant from this business? Build a business that can run without me, which is essentially saying, how do I become the least valuable member of my own team?
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's a very difficult internal kind of battle to have with yourself, but it does result in ultimately better financial decisions down the road. I think it does. It's just it takes a lot of meditation and thinking over to get to that point in the first place.
I think it's also why a lot of people become serial entrepreneurs. They kind of start one business, make themselves redundant, and think like, okay, now what do I do? Panic. Oh, I have this other cool idea for a business. And we start from the bottom again and keep working through that. And
Absolutely.
then even more just become like investors or even angel investors where they kind of say, okay, cool, I've done this already. I know what it's like. I'm going to do something really great and make this business succeed from the
Yeah.
outside as well.
And we see this happen so much, especially with guys who manage to do like the big unicorn sales and they manage to sell their business for 50 million. The first thing they tend to do is they set up a consultancy with 3 or 4 people and get back to doing the work, because that was when they were happy. They were happy doing the consultancy, and they kind of think this sale of this business basically allows me to pay for my lifestyle of consulting when I want. But the thing I actually like to do is the consultation. And we see that time and time and time and time again. Um, and I think that's it's a very difficult habit to break. And maybe it can't be broken. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not a case of, I think the misconception overall with this entire kind of arc is that if you make a ton of money, at some point you'll feel like you're making enough money to be able to step back. And I have never seen that happen. I have seen people understand that they need to build the business to be able to step back from when they're making nothing. I've seen people who have a 10, $15 million a year business and they physically cannot stand the idea of stepping back and working fewer than 50 hours a week. It doesn't play well with them. So it's got nothing to do with the money. It's entirely to do with, well, what's your goal for the business going forward? What are you happy with tying your identity to? And that, again, that is very difficult for people to do.
And now let's dig a little bit more into your business. So sell your service. So you chose to specialize in helping funnel builders sell their services. Now, benefits of a funnel, some of them are obvious. You get to be in that driver's seat for the entire customer journey. It's a lot of like control, and I think quite a combination of skills that you can apply to that. But what got you hooked?
Yeah, that's a good question, because part of it comes down to the niche. When I first started, and again, it's easy to see this snapshot. It's like Mike has best-selling books just around the thing of funnel builders, and he's invited to speak on events just to do with funnel building. If you go back to my first blog posts, I'm talking to WordPress designers and graphic designers and photographers, and I'm talking to anyone and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I had started to build parts of a funnel for other businesses, and I thought, I'm just going to go after that. Back in 2016, when I was like, I just want to work with people who say they build marketing funnels, that wasn't a thing. Funnel builders wasn't a thing. It was people kind of hacking together different bits and pieces. ClickFunnels had kind of been around, but it wasn't really taking off yet, that platform. Tools like yours would have cost tens of thousands of dollars for people to put together back then. And we know that because we built one of them. I was like, I want to work with people who understand that this is how sales are going to be made online going forward. Websites are great, but I think they're just a part of the process. And what's interesting is the more I work with funnel builders, what they really enjoy is the high level overview stuff. They like saying, well, we can acquire the customer here, and we can sell to them here, and we can upsell to them here, and then we can continue selling to them here, and we can develop a relationship with them further going forward. That strategic overview was really exciting to them, and I got excited by them getting excited about it. So it was a bit of a gamble going after them as a market, because they didn't really exist back then. But now we're seeing just explosive growth within everyone wanting to offer that to their customers. So yeah, it was very exciting for me.
Right. And then can you kind of give us one of the biggest mistakes you see funnel builders make when they're selling their services? Because what you do is you help them kind of price themselves, get themselves out there. So what's the biggest mistake that they make, and how can they avoid it?
Yeah, so the number one biggest mistake they make is, we have a saying at Sell Your Service, which is sell futures, not features. And a lot of businesses try to sell marketing funnels. And the first rule of selling marketing funnels is, do not talk about marketing funnels. Your customers, whether they are insurance agents, they run a grocery store, they are coaches, whatever, they don't know or care what a marketing funnel is until you start digging into, well, what's the future that they want to experience? Coaches want more clients. I wish it was more exciting than that. I wish I could come up with loads of other variations, but they don't. They want more clients. Grocery stores want more revenue. A business doing $15 million a year, they want more leads, right? So there are some pretty specific things that people want. And if you go into the market and say, hey, we're funnel builders, we build excellent marketing funnels, a lot of businesses try to or a lot of funnel builders and agencies, they try to get more specific and say, we are a cold lead gen acquisition performance marketing agency. I'm like, that means even less to the customer.
Yeah.
Whereas what we did, we went to a market, and it was just the two of us at the time, and then we hired a team. We said, if you're an insurance agent, we will convert your website traffic into free leads that cost less than it takes for you to advertise to them. I haven't talked about marketing funnels, I haven't talked about website, I haven't talked about cost of acquisition, performance optimization, any of that. I'm not even the best funnel builder in my own business now, right? So it would be remiss of me to try and sell them. But instead, I was like, insurance agents, their biggest problem is customer acquisition. They spend hundreds of dollars per click on acquisition. They have a load of traffic coming to their website. So clearly their biggest problem is customer acquisition. Why not become specific about the future that they want? And so if you want to sell more marketing funnels, stop talking about marketing funnels. And this kind of symbiotic relationship happens where that means you need to have a niche, you need to have an audience and a specific who that you go after. It's not enough to say we work with small businesses, or we work with coaches. Great, that's a good start, but specifically what type of coach? Like, we work with financial coaches who are looking to acquire more clients, and their biggest problem is that they're working one-on-one, or that they have a feast and famine cycle with their client acquisition. Like, that's so much more appealing and interesting than saying you sell marketing funnels. Like, why not go after the market like that? So to me, that's the biggest mistake that they make, is they try to sell the funnel rather than selling the future state that the customer's in. And it drives me bananas whenever I see it as well. So, but it's good that it exists, because then my business exists. So that's the number one mistake that I think people make.
And it kind of relates to some of what the funnel builders will be busy with. I mean, they do a fair amount of copywriting, and one of the biggest rules there is you sell your benefits. You don't talk about the fees. Nobody cares that it can do this. I want to know what that will give me later.
Yeah. And part of the problem as well is, I'm going to blame you guys a little bit, is when companies like you create such easy to use systems, and systems that work, and they're fun to use and they're easy to use and they do the job. Internally, we get very excited. We go, oh my God, my customers are going to love this. I'm like, they won't. They'll love the result. They actually don't care that they now have like card authorization limits embedded into their checkout pages. They don't care about that. And I think when we start to use platforms like Systeme.io, or any of the platforms that are out there, it's very easy to get wrapped up in, we get excited about those features. It's a bit like when I come home and I say to my wife, like, oh, I just bought this brand new Stream Deck. It's got 15 buttons and allows me. And my wife's like, why would I care about that? Your customers don't care about those features. What they care about is their business and their life, and you get to use those features. That's awesome, but don't confuse why you're buying a platform as to what you could sell to your customer. And as a huge people waste a lot of money, I think, and time and energy doing that.
And then do you have any advice for funnel builders on how they reach those ideal customers? Because while some of them, yeah, sure, you can go find them on a Facebook group, they're hanging out and they're asking the right kind of questions. What do you do if the people you're after are not as tech savvy, or they're not necessarily as digital as you'd like them to be? They're still stuck in that brick and mortar space.
Yeah. So when we started this call, you and I were talking about like my financial journey. And I said it's really easy to give a snapshot of me saying, hey, I've got 109 grand in the bank or whatever. And previous to that, we don't talk about the years and months of grind and headaches and problems. And market research is the same. If someone comes to me and says, hey, Mike, I want to get more customers for my funnel business, my first question is going to be, what type of clients do you serve? Well, kind of anyone. I'm like, I can't find you anyone. That is the equivalent of saying, I want to work in animal conservation. Okay, great. What type of animal would you like to help protect? And they go,
All of them.
I'm like, well, do we even like sea-based, land-based, or air-based? Like, can we even start there? However, if you come to me and say, I want to work with restaurants that have been affected by COVID, who now are offering a Uber-style service, and they have at least 2 kitchens or a restaurant and a commissary kitchen, I could probably find you 100 leads like that, like with just by Googling it.
Yeah.
The problem is not where are the customers. The problem is you aren't asking the right question, not you specifically, but the funnel builders aren't asking the right question with, who do I want to go after? And that requires a lot of thought and patience and being specific. And people don't like the idea of going down a niche because they worry that it might restrict their market. But I'll promise you that you'll find 10 customers infinitely faster when you know who you want to work with than just going after anyone and everyone. And what's really funny about that as well is, the faster you are able to tell other people who you work with, the faster you'll get referrals. My gran doesn't know what a marketing funnel is. She's very bright. Is 94 years old and still completely compos mentis, but the reality is when I say to her, oh yeah, we do Facebook acquisition funnels, she doesn't know what that is. She does know, however, that I work with marketing agencies. So if a marketing agency, in the conversations that she has with other marketing agencies, if that ever comes up, I'm way more likely to get a referral. Similarly, if Natasha works with YouTube content creators who have got over 100,000 subscribers, that might not be me. But if I know someone who's got 100,000 subscribers and I know their core problem is not monetizing their audience enough on on Google, and relying on those ads, and they want to start launching a product, I'm like, you should talk to Natasha because that's the problem that she solves. So as soon as you can start to articulate who you work with, it becomes infinitely faster to start generating referrals, start asking other people, finding them, Googling them, having a cold conversation with them, finding those Facebook groups. It all starts with the research stage. And that, I think, is hard work, and it can feel a little bit slow at times, but that's where I would start personally.
Okay, definitely. And then what are the steps that you think these funnel builders need to follow to kind of take them from the skill that they have to sale? So we've spoken about kind of the market research, identifying exactly who their niche is, who they're building these funnels for. What then? How do they kind of put themselves out there? How do they convince someone that they're worth this kind of risk? Because yeah, I think even if you are quite clear about the future that you're selling, you're still selling something that they can't see, touch, feel, physically understand to an extent.
And yeah, see, a big part of what the whole of kind of human existence is at the moment all of it has moved into stuff that we can't touch and see. We
Yeah.
think we can, we can't. There is no difference between a Tesla and my old, whatever it is, Volkswagen Golf out the front. They both get me from A to B. Someone would have a Tesla because they want other people to realize, oh, they own a Tesla. That's basically why we own any of the products that we own. I'm the same. I buy LED lights because I'm like, I want people to think I'm a YouTuber, right? It's dumb status-based stuff. So you have to understand that any service that you're developing for the customer is all based around that. The problem is that we try to put all of that up front with the sales process. We try to kind of give this blanket approach and get very clever of all the things, and it's called dropping the piano. It's when you say to the customer, here's 101, even if they are true benefits, here's 101 benefits that you're going to appeal to your life. If you truly want to start having more sales conversations with people, you need to have a hyper specific, singular, I call it a function. Some people call it a currency, or something specific as an offer that makes them go, yeah, ultimately I do want that. In my particular case, and I'm not doing this to pitch, I'm just trying to give it an example.
Yeah.
Our offer is, if you're a funnel builder or a funnel agency and you can sell $10,000 marketing funnels, I will show you how to double your monthly revenue in 90 days and get 10 hours back a week. Do we talk about content marketing and authority marketing and how to build affiliate marketing? Of course we do all of that, but I can't dump that on you right now. I need to have a hyper specific offer. So when you have your niche, if you're going out to market and having any of these conversations, it needs to be focused around the singular hyper specific function that you're going to deliver to them. It's not enough to say, I'm going to give them a marketing funnel, or I'm going to do their marketing, or I'm going to help them their web presence. What do they genuinely care about? If it's coaches, it's probably clients. That's ultimately what they're looking for, right? They want higher quality clients. So if you go to your market saying, I'm going to show you how to get 10 high quality clients within 90 days, that is what you should be going after. There's a secondary part to this where I think a lot of people go, well, how could I possibly guarantee these results? How could I possibly guarantee that? That's down to the quality of the customer that you're working with. That's actually their problem. So that's why I think qualification is so important. We don't work with startup businesses at all, because if I spend all of my time and energy and you go from 0 to 10,000 a year, I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
If I help you get from 100,000 to 200,000 a year, that's much more important to me. The market that you decide to go after will inform the types of results that you can get them, and the types of results you can get them will inform how quickly you are to make a sale if you want to be that hyper specific. Like I said, I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, right? Which is why I'm not invited to a lot of dinner parties, as I mentioned. But truthfully, funnel builders are in a really special position right now because everyone is looking to scale the ability to sell. Our entire sales force globally has been completely shifted now. All of a sudden, the concept of having sales meetings face to face doesn't exist anymore. People are taking video seriously. All of a sudden, people are taking content marketing seriously. Podcasting, I know you guys have been running it for a while, but all of a sudden has been taken seriously. We have this advantage over all of the big large corporations, and I know that because not only did I work for them, and then there was a stage where I was told you don't really get marketing, Mike, so you're fired. Now those big corporations, they pay me crazy money to consult with them and tell them the stuff that I was trying to tell them to do 10 years ago. Do content, create stuff. You can create engagement and meaningful relationships with your customers, and funnel builders, a lot of them are ahead of the curve. They're way ahead of the curve in terms of these larger corporations. So there's a huge advantage to be had, but don't get overexcited and try to dump all of it on the customer at once. Try to focus on the singular specific function that they are going to experience, that they really, really, really care about, and dig into that a bit. Start asking more questions and more problems, and then you can close them later. And I've got tons of resources, as have you guys, on pricing and defining your niche and stuff, but that all comes later. It's the decision on who do you want to work with and what do you want to do with them that really matters.
Yeah, and I think summarizing it in kind of that like one-line sales pitch is incredibly not easy. It takes a while, but I think it's incredibly important for you because it kind of defines what your goal is. It defines what their goal is. It focuses all of the stuff that you do on that. And yeah, definitely. And then one more question, last question about funnel people, and then I will pick your brain about YouTube. But are there any other skills that you advise funnel architects to kind of work towards? Because our last guest was Bolivar Muniz, and one of the things that he did to succeed and quite quickly as a funnel builder was to take up a design coach, someone who showed him how to, I don't know, have that eye for design, that eye for things that look good and are aesthetically pleasing. So what skills do you think people need today as funnel builders?
Okay, so in terms of actual funnel building, if you're the person putting the pieces together, the number one piece of advice I could give you would be to get good at copy and copywriting. Like, that will never ever go away.
Yeah.
And I can say that with confidence because we still communicate with language. So it is the ability to put a really compelling argument into language. If you happen to turn that into a video sales letter or a sales script, fine, great, but you still need to have that same semblance of, here's the incredibly interesting headline, here's the objection that we're going to turn immediately, here's the promise that we're making, those kind of story beats. So that's critical. And I will bet dollars to donuts that a well written, boring sales page will always convert better than a sales page with loads of design and it looks really lovely, but with awful copy, right? And we know this to be true for a variety of reasons, partly because written books are still sold in their millions, and well, the ones I do might have pictures in them, but most of them don't have pictures in them anymore, right? The other skill, though, is I want to challenge funnel builders to start thinking, do I want to be a funnel builder or run a funnel business? And those are two very, very different things. As we mentioned, I'm not the best funnel builder in my own company now. We build funnels and we build funnels talking to funnel builders. So it gets a little bit claustrophobic. I'm not the best person who does it, though. If you want to just build funnels, great, find a company that will value you and do that. If you want to run a funnel business, and tools like Systeme.io actually, I think, enable you to run a funnel business as much as become a funnel builder. Start thinking about cash flow forecasts and profit acquisition and cost of customer acquisition, and 30% is going to go towards hiring other people, and those types of things will grow your business much, much faster. And again, we know this because everyone on the planet can make a better burger than McDonald's, but no one has as big a business selling burgers as McDonald's. We know that being the world's best at the X skill, whatever it is, doesn't result in making the most amount of money and being financially secure. So I would challenge people, if they truly, truly, truly want to grow their business, maybe start training other funnel builders. And I spend more money training our funnel builders now, as in buying their materials from people who know what they're talking about, than me doing it, because it's my job to lead the business, which is a very difficult transition to make. But long term, I think that's the one that people should be going after.
Well, yeah, I think, like you said, it's a lot more secure, and you've got a bit more control over it, and I think more time on your hands as well, which, like we said, is what people are after. Okay,
Yeah.
let's dig into YouTube a little bit. So you've,
Right.
yeah, something I'm learning as we go, and something that I think is becoming more and more popular. So you've got nearly 11,000 subscribers on your Sell Your Service channel and over 500,000 views. How essential do you think something like YouTube, or a platform where you're putting out content on social media, is for someone starting a business, even as a funnel builder?
Okay, okay. I've never heard it phrased like that before. If 15 years ago I'd approached every business on the planet and said, I'm going to give you a platform, which by the way is free, you don't have to pay a cent for, that's going to allow you to reach an unlimited number of people, and they are actively going to be searching for information on how to do whatever, you would say that's impossible. How would anything like that exist? And even though, back in 2005, YouTube was beginning, but it was a completely different animal back then. It is the equivalent of being given access to 4 billion people who are regularly consuming and watching content, even if you don't do video, if it's podcasting or blogging or whatever. The ability to say, I'm able to find X number of people who are demonstrating an intent and saying, I'm interested in learning more about this. You can't put a monetary value on that. Our subscriber count compared to a lot of my competitors is very, very low. But I know that the conversion rate from views to leads is extremely high for our audience, for that particular platform. I think a lot of people get into social media and content marketing thinking that the metrics to follow are views and subscribers and blah 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 blah. It's not. It's not at all. If only, and again, let's say that your business needs to make six figures, 100 grand, right? That's it. That's 100 customers giving you $1,000 a year. So that's less than what, 80 quid a month, right?
Yeah.
For 100 customers. If I had one video that said, hi there, my name's Mike Killen. I'm going to show you as a financial coach how to, whatever that function was we said at the start, like how to get 10 new clients. And I just talked about that. And then I did another video talking about that. And then another video talking about that. Just those same things on repeat. If I'm a financial coach and I come across these videos, my intent to buy is going to be exponentially higher because you're so specific about what it is that you're talking to me about. I'm going to want to get in contact with you. The sales calls that I have now, when we're selling $4,000, $5,000, $8,000 products, $20,000 coaching programs, or whatever it is, they are infinitely smoother and faster because people have got to know me through my video content. It's free, it can be repurposed, it lives there forever. You don't need to have high numbers. I think that's the biggest mistake people make, is you need to have high numbers, and you won't for a long time. In fact, you probably never will, because the high numbers go to basically prank channels and kids videos. Right? Those are the ones that get the biggest views, and those are exponentially bigger than even the ones who have got, like, is it Mark Robber, who's got millions of subscribers, and he'll do about 2 million views per video quite comfortably, but he's small fry compared to the guys who do the big prank channels. Those guys have a completely different monetization strategy, so looking at them is wrong. Instead, if you could just have even 500 people who regularly watch your content and think, man, Natasha seriously knows what she's talking about when it comes to, producing blog content based around audio rips or whatever. Like, you couldn't get better marketing than that. And for the sake of doing it for free and being uncomfortable on camera for a bit, like, if anyone's interested, go back to my earliest videos and you'll see first of all, I'm in my mum's house, right? Poor lighting. I think I'm wearing a shirt, which is not me at all. it's all wrong. No one cares about any of that stuff now. They just want to watch the stuff that's relevant to them today. And if I had to start a business again from scratch, the first thing I would start doing is creating content specific to my market, because it just exponentially pays for itself over and over and over. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
And what's the biggest obstacle you faced when you started on YouTube? Because I think, like you said, it can be quite awkward, uncomfortable. I know even my first podcast episode on here is miles away from
Yeah.
how okay it is now. And I studied drama, so I really should be better at this.
Oh, really? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I think people think it's being on camera. I think a lot of people are like, so if I look up, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bits of camera equipment. And it turns out I only use my phone now. So I've constantly been trying to be like, oh, I'm going to have a teleprompter with my phone and that's going to read the script out to me. Or I'm going to do interviews or whatever. And I need to have a brilliant microphone, or I need to have a 4K camera with all this kind of stuff. And again, my most popular videos are me talking to the camera with relatively bad lighting, but talking about something that I really care about and that my audience cares about, right? So people think it's being on camera. It's not. It's people are actually worried about putting their ideas out there and being ridiculed. And then they say, oh, but I don't want to appear on camera. Their deeper problem is actually being seen as being bad and being ridiculed, and having people say, you don't know what you're talking about. The good news is that no one's going to watch your first 50 to 100 videos. So no one's going to see you. So great. All right. That's that problem. The worst that happens is that it goes viral and 100,000 people watch it. And you'll then have 50,000 people who agree with you and 50,000 people who don't care. That's the irony, is like apathy will be your biggest problem. I think the actual biggest problem that people face when they get into YouTube is they don't do enough research around what their audience really, really cares about. The number one mistake I see agencies make, and it's a real shame because there's so much potential out there. Let's say I'm an agency and I build marketing funnels. Even if I have a niche such as coaches or dentists or whatever, the videos that I see most people produce are based around, here's how a dentist can build an opt-in page. That's not what your audience cares about. That is, again, selling the feature. Instead, if we say, here's how dentists can double the number of calls and inquiries they get, and talking it from that perspective, that's 100 times more interesting. And what's interesting about that as well is there's a ton of different angles you can take with that. You could just give an overview of the funnel. You could give an overview of the call sheet. You could interview 5 other people to see how they're doing it. You could just talk someone through a high level model without even referring to funnels. So again, when I see a lot of agencies and they say, oh, we're an agency and the majority of our content is, here's how to add a WordPress plugin, for example, I'm like, that's completely missing the point. That's useful for other WordPress developers and other agencies, but your market isn't other agencies. You're not demonstrating that you care so much about your audience that you're giving them content. Like you're creating content either for yourself or for your colleagues, which is completely wrong. So people think it's their problem with the camera, but it's not. Their problem is the topic of the conversation that they're creating online, and it's a real shame, because again, there's some really talented people out there who could be creating some amazing content if they would just stop creating it for their colleagues and start creating it for their customers.
Okay, I think that's some excellent advice, and I think that kind of applies to anyone who's making videos on YouTube that aren't necessarily entertainment focused. And then the last thing I want to pick your brain about is productivity. So obviously, post the hard lockdowns of COVID-19, although I see other countries are going back into hard lockdowns. I think South Africa sort of did that right at the beginning of like 2020 and sent everyone home, and we're sort of more open than anywhere else. But I think it's left us with a really interesting kind of working model. So we've got lots of people working from home, people who are in this hybrid environment of 3 days at the office, 2 days here, and productivity becomes a bit difficult when you kind of work and eat and sleep all in the one place. So what advice do you have to help people kind of get through this shift?
Yeah, I mean, what have you seen? Because I'm in your group and I've seen this question come up. What have you seen as the number one complaint that comes through from other agencies? You got any idea on that?
I know that quite a lot of people find that they're working too much and they're not actually getting very much done. So they kind of sit with this. I've done 15 hours of work today, but I haven't managed to finish
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing that I needed to.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, and that's really common. And so I might not be the best person to talk to you about productivity because first of all, so our team are all on a 4-day week because I was like, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. If I'm not doing any work at 3:30 on a Friday, why should you be? Like, if you haven't done it by then, it's probably not going to get done at all. So I would rather just say, everyone else take whatever it is, Monday or Friday off. There's some mixed feedback about whether it works for different businesses, but I actually think it's based around trust, and that's what ties into productivity. I trust how productive you're being. The second element is that being productivity is not about doing more, it's about doing less. It's
Yeah.
about scaling back the amount of work and the amount of tasks that you've got. We could talk about, like, again, I've talked about, I've got these stream decks and I use something called text expander, which like is supposed to help me be more productive. And there's brain.fm that plays specific rhythmic beats or whatever. That's all fine, but again, if you are aiming at 15 different targets, you're not going to hit any of them. So, and I was talking about this with a friend of mine, a guy called Mark Fontaine, who runs a service design show. Really, really, really interesting guy. And we were saying how the most productive thing that you could possibly do at the start of the week is to sit in a room with zero distractions, zero screens, nothing, even for 15 minutes, and think about what would be the most important thing that I could get checked off this week, and just do one thing. When I was working with a telco company a while back, and I was consulting with them, I was trying to explain to their managers, like, if your team are able to do one genuinely important thing per week, not busy work, not stuff that they're supposed to be doing, but actually do one thing that grows the core metric of that business unit per week, you are going to smash it. You're going to absolutely destroy the competition. But you are all way too concerned with trying to go after, like, oh, this is how many emails I've got, or we have inbox zero, or we've done this many meetings, or we've propagated this many ideas. If you haven't got a core idea of the number one thing that you're adding value to, for me it's content, right? That's the number one thing I could do within my business. For one of our team members, it's refund reductions. Like, that's the number one thing I care about, right? If you don't know what that core KPI is, I think some people call them,
Yeah.
and you don't think, well, what's the number one thing I could do to either reduce that or even eliminate it entirely, all the other busy work, of course you're going to feel like you're never going to get enough done. Like, of course you are. I never feel like I'm getting enough work done. I always feel there's always a list of things to do, but it's way more important for me to think, did I get the next chapter of the book written? That's ultimately what matters. That's going to be the biggest leap in the business. If customers email you, and they do, bless them, and they say, well, this is, I'm really panicking because I've done a load of design changes to the work you've given me and now it looks garbage. Great, that's a problem. It's your problem. It's not my problem. And if I solve it, it won't necessarily grow my business. That's again a very hard decision for people to make, but you have to be that level of ruthless and brutal to say, nah, the first hour, the first 2 hours are focused on me doing whatever I think is important. And just really quickly, because I know I'm banging on and on and on about this stuff, but I could tell one of the first things we do is do a calendar audit for a lot of our guys. And they
Mm-hmm.
say, our number one problem is money, revenue, 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 revenue. I go, great, of course it is, right? It's most people's problem. I'm going to check out your Google Calendar. Out of all of these things that you've got spread across here, which is the sales activity? Where do you spend time? And they go, oh, I don't have any time dedicated to sales activity. Right. So you've got podcasts booked in, you've got training booked in, you've got running the kids to school. And I understand that's important, right? I understand all of this, but you haven't got a single 1 hour block per week, which is 50 hours a year that you could be dedicating to just generating sales. So you say you have a problem with sales, but you're not dedicating any time to it whatsoever. it's not about trying to cram more stuff in. It's about deciding what is more important to do and just allowing that, and everything else will take care of itself. And I think that's a very difficult decision to make, because it forces you to think about, well, what do I want to do, and what do I need to do? So in terms of things around productivity, I personally would forget about the tools and the apps and all this kind of stuff, and start thinking about, well, actually, what's the biggest impact that I could do and have on the business, and just be happy with knocking that down, because that's really what matters in the long run.
I'm with you there. I think I noticed it like on a personal level. So I took 2 weeks off in December to rest and be a human, but I still on Monday set up all the stuff that we had for YouTube. So I'd done like a crazy amount of recording like 2-3 episodes in a week, on top of managing content, writing my own posts and all the other stuff that I do. But then in the holiday, I sort of said, okay, cool, Monday. And it took me 2.5 hours to set up and edit and create all the copy and the designs and just put it all out there, send the links and social media stuff through. 2.5 hours to do something that usually takes me like 2 hours per day that I'm doing it. And I was like, wow. And it makes a huge impact. It keeps our following high. It increases all of the stuff that I'm working on with the YouTube channel. And yeah, it was literally 2.5 hours. So now I kind of set myself up in the mornings to be like, okay, cool. Monday is the day I post this. I have to do it. 2.5 hours. Done.
Yeah. And then you are done as well.
Yeah. And it's like, that's off my chest for the rest of the week, and I can deal with whatever fire I have to put out.
100%. And this is like, I understand that fires come up and we have life obligations and stuff, but yeah, it's like panicking and saying, I'm going to keep filling the bucket up with water. Actually, if I just spent 15 minutes looking at the bucket, I might be able to find where the hole is, and I'll spend some time doing that. And yet you might even have people saying, you're lazy, you're crazy doing it this way, why aren't you getting back to me? You know, we live in a world where people can contact you 24 hours a day. Let them. Like, fine, great, burn yourself out. You get in contact with me as much as you need to, but I'm still going to focus on the thing that is the most important to driving the core metric that I'm in charge of forward within the business. And it's again, it's a psychological thing rather than a practicality thing. It's just something you've got to get over yourself. So yeah, I like that. I like that you managed to compress 10 hours of work into 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, and just suddenly like being forced to get it done, because I was like, I want to be relaxing in 2 hours, so I'm going to make this happen. All right, we've come to the kind of like the end of the big part of this. I have some short questions for you, so kind of like 1-sentence answers. Let's give this a go. So is there one book or podcast that you would recommend to our listeners?
Have the Courage to Be Disliked. No, The Courage to Be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi as a book.
Okay. Cool. That's an interesting one. I think they'll dig that. Very different from the usual prescription of 4-hour work week to every single entrepreneur. And then a piece of advice that you would give to your 18-year-old self looking back.
It's the same. It's have the courage to be disliked. Yeah, be comfortable with being disliked.
Okay. And then finally, where can our listeners find you? So if you say where you are, social media, and any of the other stuff, I will put it in the tags.
Yes, sellyourservice.co.uk is our site, or youtube.com/sellyourservice is the YouTube channel, or our Facebook group is sellyourservice.co.uk/Facebook, and that will redirect you there.
Okay, perfect. Michael, thank you so much for joining me, giving me your time and like so much of this like really in-depth advice. I think not just funnel builders, but a lot of people who are starting a business and have to kind of apply a lot of those skills themselves are going to get a lot out of it. So thank you. And thank you to our listeners today. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on a podcasting app, subscribe to the Systeme podcast so that you never miss an episode. Systeme.io is a digital marketing software platform packed with all the tools you need to grow your online business.